information there that people may or may not have been aware of.
Thank you.
Okay, final presentation and public input today is from Heart of the City, and that's to do with time of use charging, and we have the Chief Executive of Heart of the City, Viv Beck, here to address the committee. Welcome, Viv. I'll leave you to do the introductions, and the floor is over to you.
Thank you. Tanya Loveridge is joining me. We don't have a presentation. We had a late confirmation of permission to come, but thank you for having us. Getting people back into the city centre is a top priority, and some of that is through really some exciting things that we're working on to do that, but it's also about reducing barriers, and there are a number of those. I think if you put yourselves in the shoes of a small business trying to trade out there, after nearly a decade of construction, COVID, post-COVID issues, cost of living, it's pretty tough going right now. And if I just give you a snapshot of where we're sitting, the foot traffic is about 70% of pre-COVID, so that's about 50,000 people down around Queen Street every day. And I'll give you some numbers too, given we're talking about time of use. The number of people coming in the morning peak, 5 days a week, 7 to 9 a.m, in 2015, there were just over 42,000 people coming by private vehicle. By 2023, this had dropped 45% to 23,000. So that's a drop of about just over 19,000 private vehicles a day. Now, the biggest challenge in that, I know that that is the drive to get vehicles out, but the problem really is that the total people movements, which include all modes, have dropped 41% too. So we actually have gone from about 79,500 people coming in the morning peak to 46,500. So that's a loss of nearly 33,000 people. So unfortunately, whilst the vehicles have come down, that hasn't been replaced with PT and active modes. Now, recently the picture's changing a bit, which is a good thing. And the latest data I saw, the public transport and active modes are just over 50% again, which we all heralded with delight before COVID when that actually happened. But the reality is the low number of people coming in is the major problem. That quantum is still concerning. Now, obviously, when the CRL is operating, that will change. That's unfortunately about 2 years away still. So that's a problem. And with more people hopefully coming to live here, the density will improve and things will get better. But the reality is there is a gap in terms of how many people we've got here now. Information we had last time we asked Auckland Transport was that even with the CRL, unless there's a major change in rapid transit, we'd still have a majority of people not within a 45-minute commute. So just sort of, that's a bit of a painting of a bit of a picture of where we're at the moment. Obviously, there's a promise of a bright future, but we've got a couple of years ahead that will need some careful consideration. In terms of the time of use, we submitted to the congestion question in 2021. We did quite a thorough submission. Overall, we support the concept of time of use charging rather than to address congestion. What we found through our work that we thought it should be part of a region-wide approach to address congestion with the selection of corridors subject to charging based on the severity of congestion in the corridor, with a level playing field approach that minimises displacement risks to the location of business and jobs, and using data that reflects the post-COVID reality. So that was middle of COVID. Obviously, a lot's happened since then. And while the cordon, the city centre cordon, I know not everyone's talking about it, but it's still appearing in the paper as an option to be considered, so that's why we've come today. While the city centre cordon was not one of the top rated options in that congestion question report, primarily due to its limited geographic coverage and corresponding limited potential for impact on overall network performance, it was deemed to be low risk. And at that time, we were concerned that it wasn't low risk. And in fact, now, given the circumstances we're facing now, we're saying we think that would actually be quite high risk. if it was just a city centre cordon. Unless we get a major increase in the number of people living here in that time. So that's the big thing. If you look at the Stockholm example, they got a 20% more cars, 5% increase in PT. Well, based on our current situation, that wouldn't solve our gap. It would actually widen the gap. So really what we're asking for in the work that is ahead is that it should be part of a fair approach to reduce congestion pressures where it is more severe in the roading corridors, not penalise one destination over others. So what we're asking for today is quite specific. We understand the work is ahead, and that's a good thing. We will have opportunities to be involved in that, and it needs to be determined what is the optimum way to charge time of use, where and when. What we're asking for is that, one, post-COVID data is used, two, that there's an economic impact assessment on geographic areas potentially affected, and if it was a city centre cordon, that would be important from our perspective, that it was a wider analysis that understood what it potentially could do, particularly given the sort of numbers we've got at the moment. Timing will also be important, including for trials, because one of the things that have come out through our feedback is that if there isn't good public transport, it's just another barrier for people. So even if there were to be trials in 2025, if it was something trialling around the city centre before we had the CRL, we're suggesting that that would be problematic. So our ask is quite simple. We just want to use current data. We want the consideration of the economic impact on places potentially affected, and good consideration around timing.
Thank you very much, Vivian. I see Mark Lambert making some notes there, I hope, on those very points that you've raised. Do we have some questions from councillors? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Viv. Look, I'm just interested in your scene setting from the very beginning. You talked about data, pre-COVID, etc. Are we not, and the fact that it isn't back to what it was in your 9 to 5 kind of regime way back, is it not the reality of life that people are not working as they used to pre-COVID?
Oh, absolutely.
That you have...
absolutely.
People working from home a lot. So no matter who is working in the city, they're not here 5 days a week. And so therefore, to make up your numbers that get anywhere near probably where you were pre-COVID, that you actually need more people to live in the city.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm saying. We need really great transport to bring people here, and we need people living here. And I did say that if we can attract people back and more people to live here, I mean, if you look at Manhattan, for example, they had about 85% of people either living in Manhattan or they're able to get there through rapid transit before they started making some of the changes we've made here. So the reality is, all I'm trying to signal is that we've got some risk here. We've got about 3/4 of people working 3 to 5 days. So I'm not making a judgment around how we've dropped the numbers. What I'm saying is, before this project gets too far down the track, we're just flagging that we have got a big gap here, and what might have been seen as low-hanging fruit and low risk a few years ago, I'm just highlighting there is risk here now.
Okay, Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much, Viv, and thank you for the good work of Heart of the City. It's appreciated and important. In terms of, I've heard you say on recent occasions that the city now is in a difficult situation, lower foot traffic, public perceptions, negative perceptions for various reasons, shops for lease and all the rest of it. And you have said that we're just waiting for the CRL to open up, and then the problem will be certainly improved. I've thought about that recently because I had the same opinion as you. Everything will be okay once the CRL starts. The millions will be flooding into the city automatically. But I'm starting to question that now. I just want your view. I recall that in the year 2000, rail patronage, for instance, was 2 million per year, and to get it up to 20 million per year took a long time and a lot of work, and should not be taken for granted. Do you think that we need to work together with your organisation in terms of examining how we can increase public transport access to the city, particularly rail, which is lagging? Your view, please.
Oh, look, thank you, Councillor. I think that's a really fair point, and people are sharing that view. I'm trying to be optimistic, but the reality is we've got a big challenge here. And I think we've always said, actually, right from I presented to Council in about March 2020, April, I think, and said, you know, what is happening here is the biggest thing we will see. You know, we'd lost 90% of our street trading business. We have to take a very collaborative approach here. And I still maintain that's right. Whether it's dealing with the safety and the social issues, whether it's dealing with the access issues, because they're big. If I look at the barriers to come here, access is ahead of safety. Now, that tells you something. People are finding it difficult. I mean, people are finding it difficult out here when they get pinged, an elderly man, $300 in that EVA. You know, we've got to make sensible, practical decisions to make the place appealing, have great things to attract people back in, but also I do think we have to have a more collaborative approach. I'm signalling that there is a challenge here and the circumstances have changed markedly. Optimistic as I want to be in my role, obviously.
Sure. But realistic.
Yeah, we've got to be realistic.
Councillor Leone.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for the kōrero this morning, and I know that you also voiced some of these concerns at regulatory the other day. Just following on from the comments from the Deputy Mayor around bringing more people into the city centre to live, and I know, of course, you've talked about the safety concerns and so on, but I just wanted to ask you, have you got any data around the fact that living in the city centre, like I'm trying to get an idea of what other things you're doing to try and promote actually people moving into the city centre, and if you've got data on it being cheaper, things like that, because we've got a housing crisis in Tamaki Makaurau, but we know that there's a lot of empty apartments in the city. And we know that some of those apartments are obviously cheaper to buy or cheaper to live in than other parts of Tamaki Makaurau. So I just wanted to kind of get an idea, because I know the other day you spoke about one of the draw cards for bringing people in is the events, 8,000 people coming to the Writers' Festival and so on. But just, yeah, what else can we do in that respect in terms of the council?
Yeah, I'm pleased to say it was 85,000, so that does show that people do love events. Yes, no, we do. I mean, we're a business association, but we do have feedback that tells us what different groups think. Safety is really critical, which is why we're all working on it so hard, because people at the moment, unfortunately, some residents are pretty unhappy with what's happening around them. So we do need to make it safer urgently. But they like activity. They do like things like markets and community-type events. I mean, we have, we promote a lot of activity. It's very diverse, which people like, from big events to smaller community events. I've just come from something this morning myself. That's the sort of thing that residents like. They like a sense of community and activity, nice places to be, public spaces, green space, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's great. It was just if you think there's anything else we can be doing as council to promote people living in the city centre too, but yeah. I know it's probably a different kaupapa.
And there is a lot of work happening to do the positive things. So, we are working with Tautaki and Eki Panuku and others through the advisory board work to make sure there are coordinated activities around the positive things as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Viv. So we've got a move of thanks from the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. Thank you, Viv and Tanya, for coming along, and certainly we've made note, and the assumption is, of course, that Heart of the City is going to be a key stakeholder in the time of use, and I think the item today will certainly be looking at how people are going to be engaged with, because there are a lot of parties that we need to find out information from. So thank you for
Thank you
giving
very
us a
much,
heads
Chair.
up. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, thank you everyone who presented to us today and for the council's eagerness for questions, which I think solicited some quite informative responses. That's the end of public input. We go to local board, and there is no local board appearing before us today. Item 7, extraordinary items, none that are known of, which brings us to item 8, is the first substantive matter on the agenda, which is an update on the preparatory work for the Auckland Integrated Transport Plan. And we'll invite